Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, David Morrish. Hi David.
Hi Sue.
It's lovely to speak to you today, David. And David's somebody I tracked down because of a newspaper article that was shared within our regional committee. So I'll come on to that in a minute. Got him here to have an interesting chat with. He's got some great projects on the go. So I've got a bio here from David. Born in Ballymena, Northern Ireland, I was raised from the age of 2 in a small village in Lincolnshire. With a passion for the creative arts, I moved to Derby at the age of 18 to study for a degree in fashion. In 2010, I won the Public Award for the Hat Designer of the Year at Premier Class in Paris, and soon after secured my first permanent academic role in Sheffield. I now class myself as a Yorkshire-based academic and disruptive artist. Oh, I like the sound of that. In 2020, I've earned my master's degree in fashion and textiles from Nottingham Trent University, and I'm currently an Embroiderers Guild scholar. In 2019, I won the title of Hand and Lock Wilcombe Digital Embroiderer of the Year, which has inspired me on my next exciting embroidery adventure. I work predominantly as a senior fashion design academic at Sheffield University, where I teach on the under and postgraduate fashion design courses, and in my spare time, I embroider using my 2 digital machines. And I'm keen to promote and elevate the status of embroidery in the creative industries. Oh, so lots of interesting things in there, David, to have a go at. And a particular project I also want to speak to you about is the one that was in the Yorkshire Post article. So we'll get on to that, I'm sure.
Okay.
Links, and the best way to follow what David's up to is on Instagram, where you'll find him as Kingfly Tailoring, at Kingfly Tailoring. And his details and examples of his work will all be on his episode of StitcheryStories.com. Okie dokie. Right then, David. So, it's enough waffle from me. Would you like to start us off by sharing what you're working on and what's got you excited?
Oh, thank you, Sue. Yeah, I'm currently working on a collaboration series that I set up about a week ago, which basically involves me recreating iconic pieces of work into embroidery with the permission of the artist or designer.
Right.
And it spans a range of different disciplines, from fashion designers to fashion illustration, tattooists, graffiti artists, and book illustrators, etc. So essentially, I contact them and I ask them if I can recreate their work in embroidery. And surprisingly, a lot have said yes. So I've currently got 40 people in the pipeline.
40? 40?
40.
Oh, wow.
I was anticipating people would say no. Because I was aiming it at really well-established people.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, no, they won't go for this. And then suddenly people were replying saying, yes, they'd love to. So far I've done, I'm on my 3rd one now.
Yeah.
So the first one was for Sadie Williams, a London-based fashion designer. And then Daryl Watson was a tattoo artist in Leeds.
Yeah.
And currently I'm doing one for Richard Kilroy, who's a really well-respected fashion illustrator. But they're all very different. I picked artists with very different styles. It's all going to be very challenging, different subject matters. So we have got the floral, the animals, graffiti, cartoons, and then we've got things like skulls, abstract shapes and things like that. So it will really push the way I embroider and try and, challenge me. So I'm posting on my Instagram, I'm posting the whole process. So it's not just the outcome, it's the whole process, from how I work, from the initial piece, drawing through the whole CAD stage, and then as it's actually embroidering. So people get to see a really good insight into the process of digital embroidery.
Right.
The outcome's then posted to the artist and they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah. Wow. No, that is really interesting. And first of all, it just goes to show that if you don't ask, you don't get anywhere. So you were there thinking, oh, nobody will want to do this. And here you are with a queue of 40 people who are all dead keen to do it.
Yeah, it was really surprising. I don't know I don't know why they said yes, whether it's because in my profile it says Hand and Lock Digital Embroiderer of the Year, or whether or not it's because I secured the first one with a established fashion designer. I don't know. So I'm curious to know why they're all so keen.
Yeah.
Especially tattooists. I've got a lot from tattooists, and some of these tattooists have over 500,000 followers.
Wow.
So I was thinking, well, why have you said yes for this? It's an interesting one.
Do you think it's the novelty value of somebody going, oh, I'm going to do this in embroidery, and maybe they're not quite really sure what that means, or they've got preconceived ideas, or they're just thinking, oh, hey, yeah, let's see what happens. Is it just a curiosity factor possibly?
I think so. I think they are thinking, well, I mean, the artists are tattooists. I'm assuming they tattoo someone and then they disappear. And graffiti artists, they'll have one piece of work on a wall and then that's it. So unless they're thinking maybe of another kind of way of making money or business idea, or I don't know. I know one of them is thinking of turning his graffiti into embroidery so he can embroider them on back of jackets.
Yes, yeah.
Another one in Los Angeles, he actually said, I'll do a piece of art just for you. Can you embroider it? And we'll sell it through his online shop. And I didn't realise he's got 250,000 followers and he's got his own books and things. So it's really interesting. I don't know exactly why people have said yes, but there are book authors, illustrators, fine artists, painters, as well as fashion designers and illustrators. So I am really surprised.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And as you say, challenging different subjects as well to interpret.
That's it. I mean, I couldn't do production runs. I couldn't reproduce the same thing over and over again. That I would lose interest very quickly. So for me, I deliberately targeted artists that I love their style, or they offer something very different. And the 40 that have said yes so far, that they've allowed me to select the image. So I've deliberately picked ones that are very, very different indeed.
Yeah.
And different styles. Some are really bold and colourful, and some are really kind of sensitive. Some are cartoony, some are really abstract. So that's what keeps me interested.
Right. Yeah, that sounds absolutely fascinating. So we'll have to make sure everybody go and follow David on Instagram and then you can see what he's doing. It sounds absolutely fabulous. Right, so digital embroidery. Now, we had a guest on ages ago, Hayley. She was into digital embroidery as well. Tell me about it. Digital embroidery, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so essentially what I'm not doing is picking up the needle and putting it into the cloth and physically stitching. I've got a single needle embroidery machine that physically does that for me. But what I do is I don't like digital embroidery that is really solid and stiff, like badges, things like that.
Yes, too much thread, isn't there?
It's too much. For me, it kind of lacks a soul or a character. So what I do in my process is the design side of it at the very beginning of the journey. I might take photographs, I might draw by hand, use tracing paper, etc. But then I will digitize it into a computer, so it's a clean, almost like a cartoon image. And then I'll take it into an embroidery software program where then I apply stitches of my choice into areas that I want filled.
Right.
So I can apply satin stitches or whichever stitches that I want that program can offer. So I'm basically applying them on a computer screen.
Right. So this is different from, I've had many guests and we've got many listeners who use a sewing machine to do
a free
motion embroidery, so they drop the feedback, different altogether. So they're still making an image, but they're moving the fabric around and the needle is like drawing. It's using the power of the machine to select the stitches.
So once I've digitized it and I've applied the stitches, it then goes into the machine. And then I could, if I wanted to, just hit the play button and it will embroider it. But I don't do that because that's when you kind of end up with it being like a badge.
Yeah.
But as it's embroidery and I'm sat there and I'm looking at it, and at that point I can interrupt it whenever I want to.
Yeah.
So I can stop it, I can reverse it, I can change the colour, I can repeat areas, I can deliberately misalign it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Skip stitches. So in effect, it's like paint. I always say it's painting with thread. So I'm making design decisions at the time, based on how it's looking.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, sometimes I'm looking at it thinking, I really like that. Do I dare go any further forward, or should I skip?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I think I might press play and keep going. I think I should have stopped.
Yeah.
But you can't go back. So, but that means that each piece that I do is very individual. Even if I try and recreate a piece, it will never exactly be the same. It's like a painter trying to create the same painting. There'll always be little differences in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing I was just going to say was when you were saying there about you selecting the stitches or you might stop it, I actually thought the picture that came into my head was like kind of like a DJ mixing his music. Music came into mind. Don't ask me why, but music came into mind when you were telling me there about how you kind of stop it and look at it and move it and go forward or backwards or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can apply different fills. There's so many different fills, and then you can obviously quickly change it for another one, change the angle of it, change the size of it, and you get a really good representation of what it would be like virtually before you embroider it. It always looks slightly different when you embroider it. And especially if I interrupt the machine, it's very different anyway. So that whole creative process doesn't finish until the end, because you just don't know how it's going to turn out. But it is like music. You kind of looking at what flows and what works and what doesn't work, what to leave out and stuff. It's a good process.
Yeah.
But it's taken a long time to get to that.
So just to finish off about these different artists' work, it's going to be really fascinating, I think, to see how you interpret all of these different pieces of work in a different medium. And I think that's possibly the essence of the project, isn't it? It
is. I think for me, I'm interested in seeing the collaborative aspect of it, working with another artist.
Yeah.
But for me, it's that cross-disciplinary. So I'm crossing boundaries. And to work with graffiti artists and tattooists, and to bring embroidery, which traditionally is a very kind of luxurious craft, and graffiti, it can't be too different. So it'd be interesting when you mix with them to see what comes out of it, and that's what excites me. And I think that's what I've always been like. I've always challenged convention, so I'm not surprised I've ended up doing that.
Seems to fit, doesn't it?
It does.
Right. And then before we kind of move on to other things, then, as I said, the reason how I found you, being another Yorkshire-based person, so sorry for everybody else in the world. I know I do have people from Yorkshire that I find, and that's because I'm here and I see things I wouldn't see if they were the other side of the world. So there was a newspaper article in the Yorkshire Post that featured David and the Sheffield Embroiderers Guild. And David, do you want to tell me about that project? Because that caught my eye for a number of reasons as well, other than the fact that it was about the Embroiderers Guild and this particular project.
Yeah, essentially it was my final project for my masters at Nottingham Trent, and I was embroidering canvases for tailored jackets to try and offer more personalised jackets. And I won the hand and lock, which then got me thinking about embroidery as a form of storytelling and art pieces. And I decided I wanted to go down that route, but I wanted to have some sort of purpose. And I'm a keen runner. I love running. And one thing that really annoys me is littering. And I can't stand it.
Don't get me started.
And I decided that I wanted to create a piece of embroidery that highlighted that issue in society. So what I did is I ended up signing up to the Windermere Marathon, which was my first ever marathon up in the Lake District. And I documented the litter that I saw around Lake Windermere at every mile mark, which... Again, at the time, I didn't think there was going to be any because it's a World Heritage Site.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a surprise. Even on the start line, there was rubbish. after about the fourth mile, I thought, I'm not going to have a problem here. and in fact, it got to the point where at some points I was actually thinking, right, which rubbish shall I pick here? I haven't got one of them. It was
dear,
horrible.
so you had a choice of rubbish to waste time taking photos of. Dear.
Yeah. So I thought, well, what kind of art piece will I create with this? I went to a Woven in Kirklees in Huddersfield. There was a talk by Claire Hunter and her book.
Claire was a previous guest.
Threads of Life, is
That's it? Threads of Life.
So I went to that, and I was fascinated by the book, and I bought the book, and I read it, and the Bi Tapestry instantly struck a chord with me, because it spanned a period of time, events, multiple people working on it, and it had the same landscape format that the elevation of a marathon does.
Yes.
This long, thin.
Yes.
So I thought, could I recreate my experience of the marathon, the whole event, the litter, and where it was found in the form of a Bi Tapestry? And I love this idea of more than one person embroidering it, because I love the idea of different styles. I knew if I did it would all be very similar in style, and I didn't want that. I found the Embroidery Guild. I went to Unravel in Denby Dale.
Yeah.
There was an exhibition by Jenny Robson, and I loved it. And I had a chat with the lady in the shop, and asked her if she could give my details to Jenny. I'd be interested in working with her on a project. Next thing, Jenny contacted me. I went to their meetings, and this project evolved. I asked for 20 volunteers who would be interested in embroidering a section.
Yeah.
And we had 20 volunteers who were all very interested.
Fabulous. And give them a proper shout out.
Sheffield Embroiderers Guild.
Hello and welcome to the Sheffield Embroiderers Guild, ladies.
Yeah, so I think some of them are a bit nervous, apprehensive. And then when they saw what I wanted to do, I think some of them were quite scared to start with. But I think they all got into it, and the work was very, very different. There's always a risk that when all the sections went together, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
There's always that risk.
Yeah.
Because they worked independently. So they didn't really know what everyone else was doing.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting as well. So what I did is I for each mile mark, I put the rubbish and research of the area into a box and called it an archive box. Yeah. And then the ladies had to pick a box from random. So they didn't know which section they were getting.
Yeah.
And until they open it. And then in that box, they had the fabric, the template, the rubbish, and pictures of the area.
Yeah.
And they were asked to combine the rubbish with the area in whatever way they wanted to, embroidery-wise. And they could make the litter as subtle or as obvious as they wanted as well.
Yeah.
So some pieces, it's really clear what the rubbish was. And then some, you've got to really look carefully.
Yeah.
And I suppose when you're running, it's the same. When you go walk into the shop, some rubbish, you can't miss it. It's a mattress on the side of a road.
Yeah.
And then some, it's like that little water bottle label stuck in someone's hedgerow.
Yeah.
So, and I think, so it is a beautiful piece of embroidery, and it's 26.2 foot long.
Wow.
So each mile represented 1 foot.
By 1 foot, yeah.
So it's a 26 foot long piece of embroidery, and the ends linked together, so I can put it in a loop.
Ooh.
So you can walk all the way around it. Because obviously the marathon was the start and finish was at the same place.
Circular, yeah. That's absolutely fascinating. And I know when we just do anything in our group and we have the same challenge and say, right, off we go. And everybody comes back with something so totally and utterly different. That in itself is fascinating. But when you put something together like that, it still works, doesn't it? Don't ask me why. I have no idea. But it just all seems to work, putting it together. The backdrop of the embroidery piece is a digital print of a sky, which I took at Gunners How, a panoramic at the bottom of the lake. So I knew that the sky was going to be cohesive. And then the elevation and the shapes all joined together. Yes,
so they had to work in that template.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of the styles, they could have been anything. And each area was very different as well. So mile 4, for example, is Hawkshead in the marathon. That's the home of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter. So when so the person who got that, I can't remember what the rubbish was off the top of my head. I think, it's a strongbow can. So you're combining a strongbow can with Peter Rabbit. in Hawkshead. So there's pictures of Hawkshead, but what they did was incredible.
Yeah.
But then combine that with further around the lake, there was a sewage works, a waterworks. So that was very different. And then you've got your hotels and your Stores Hall and your Blackwell Arts and Craft House. So you've got a massive variety of subject matter in there, all joined together by litter.
Yeah.
So the styles were all going to be very different. But even the ladies' individual styles in terms of techniques meant that when it was put together, there was just so much to look at. And again, there was always a risk that it'd be too much or too clashing, but it just worked. It worked beautifully.
And it would have been lovely to see it. Now, was it going to be exhibited at the Knitting and Stitching shows?
It was. It was meant to be. It was meant to be in Nottingham at the end of year MA show, which was a couple of months ago. Possibly in London at New Designers, and then the Knitting and Stitching show at Harrogate and Alexandra Palace.
Yeah.
And also Sheffield, we were talking to Sheffield Cathedral, and Sheffield Hallam University were going to exhibit it in their in the big post office. But unfortunately, none of those have happened. So it's currently downstairs in my studio,
right,
waiting for that chance to go out.
Oh yeah, because that'd be fabulous. I went, something I was thinking, I really want to go and see it, and I was like, oh no, we can't because it's not exhibited anywhere at the moment because everything's been cancelled.
It's not. I would love to exhibit it. The article that was in the Yorkshire Post caught the attention of the MP for the Windermere area.
Ah, right.
She's very keen on raising awareness of littering. It's one of her bugbears as well. Hopefully I'll be able to get the piece up into the lakes as well, which would be really nice.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
It's all unknown at the moment.
It is definitely. But so I thought that was a really great project, and kind of brought a number of things together, all of which I'm interested in. So there we are. Yes, I'm interested in litter, running, being outside, and embroidery. There is more than one of us in this world that likes all of those things.
Definitely. I was going to say, I think as well, it was interesting because I didn't know whether the volunteers, I thought they might they might not enjoy it, or they might not understand what I was trying to do, or just apply things to their work that they know they can do. But I was really surprised by their approaches, and it taught me a big lesson as well. I mean, some of them went up to the lakes, took their own photographs, some tried different techniques for the first time. I think even Jenny tried some wire work that she hadn't done before in one of her pieces, the final section of the embroidery piece. And then she's then used it in her new work. So I think it was really, I think, inspiring in lots of different levels, not just for me, but I'm hoping for most of the members. I know a couple of members probably felt really outside their comfort zone, and probably realised that this kind of way of working isn't for them. But they tried it. It's, and they obviously still learned from that. So I think it was beneficial for both parties, really. Yeah,
and for lots and of interest to lots of people for lots of different things as well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I just found that to be a really fascinating project, which I had loads of kind of hooks of ideas into as well. Right then, David, with a background in fashion, and yet you have kind of raised the profile in terms of embroidery, particularly with being a Guild scholar as well. So how did you get interested in embroidery then?
Embroidery, I've always been interested in art and design, textiles, fashion, lots of different arts, but embroidery specifically was I'm going to be very specific here, 2008. I emigrated for about a year and a half. I lived in Latvia on the eastern border between right on the Russian border. And I taught English as a foreign language. And in order to become creative and keep that creative spirit going, I imported an embroidery machine. Really, because I was into graphics, but I didn't want to do graphic for print. I wanted something else, and embroidery fascinated me. So I imported a embroidery machine, and I taught myself how to use the software, the machines, and I started embroidering T-shirts and iPad covers and art pieces for local people in Latvia. So that was when my interest in it first happened, and then it started since then it's come back in short little bits for little projects, but nothing as intense as it is now. And even the hat designer competition that you mentioned, one of the hats I actually embroidered, so it came back again in a graphical form.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until the hand and lock, really, where I thought, actually, there's something here that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of scope for experimentation. So 2008.
When you was in Latvia.
In Latvia.
Yeah, and so then to have gone on and say won the Digital Embroidery of the Year from Hand and Lock must have been really exciting.
It was. I mean, I created a piece. I took a canvas out of a tailored jacket, and I wanted to see if I could embroider it on a canvas that was made for a jacket.
Right.
And try and combine other techniques in embroidery, such as pyrography and rhinestones, different hand embroidery as well as digital embroidery.
Yeah.
What would that look like as a design process? So I designed this owl on a canvas. And then the hand and lock came about, and I thought, and it was all about colour, and mine was very colourful.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll repackage this and submit it for the hand and lock. And it was selected for 2 awards, so the textile category, and the digital one. And it picked up the award for the digital one, which from Wilcom, which was really surprising because I didn't know whether my work would be. It's not traditional embroidery by any means at all. Yeah. So I was surprised it was shortlisted for 2, and it was well received. Yeah. And the feedback when I went to the awards evening from established embroiderers and designers was phenomenal.
Right, wow.
And I think it's strange because as an artist and designer, I've never really valued my work.
Right. Yeah.
Always see the mistakes in it.
I've heard that story a lot of times, yeah.
Well, when you've got people who are established saying that is really good, you don't believe it initially. You kind of think, no, it's not. You're just saying that to be nice. And again, the project, the collab series I'm doing at the moment, again, I was surprised when people started coming back saying yes. So it's a confidence boost, confidence boost.
It's very validating, isn't it?
It is. And it's humbling that people like your work. Yeah. But part of you still thinks, I could do better, but it's not right.
The journey continues.
It does. You just want to make that piece that you think, I can't do that any better, but that never happens.
Yeah. And then moving on to being an Embroiderers Guild scholar, how did that happen?
Debbie, the course leader at Nottingham Trent, she sent the email out saying applications are open for Embroiderers Guild scholarship. I remember speaking to Anthea at the Hand and Lock Awards.
Right, yeah, Anthea Godfrey, yeah.
And Anthea was very fascinated. I was speaking to her about the Sheffield collaboration, actually, and she was really fascinated by that. And I wasn't aware of Anthea's relationship with the Embroiderers Guild. So that was just a coincidental...
She's the Embroiderers Guild goddess.
I know. So I must have sounded really silly. I'm hoping I didn't sound silly when I was talking to her, but I didn't realise that's what she did.
Oh, she's lovely.
I kept in touch with Anthea, and when the application came open, I thought I'm going to submit the tapestry. I don't want to call it tapestry, the embroidery piece. Yeah. In the hope that I'll get funding and help towards exhibiting it and constructing it. And promoting it, as well as the Guild and my own work. So I've built this relationship with the Embroiderers Guild. I think I'm 6 months now, I think. But I've really enjoyed it, and they're currently helping me try and secure sponsorship for embroidery thread with this collab series I'm doing.
Right, yes.
So they've put me in contact with people who are interested in maybe helping me with threads and how they can help with promoting that.
Oh, that's exciting.
I think everyone's on the same page. And we want embroidery to be celebrated, not just traditional hand embroidery, but contemporary embroidery, abstract embroidery, machine embroidery.
All forms of embroidery. The Guild, we're really trying to be outward looking, and that this is a classic example of that. Be outward looking, and where else can embroidery flourish, and how else can it flourish, and with different audiences can it flourish. So
how can it be used in non-obvious ways rather than just embroidering a garment? It's just to highlight an issue of littering around in society. That's a really unusual way of using embroidery. And since then, I'm in talks with Dugdale's, the oldest cloth wool merchant producer left in Huddersfield. And they're keen on recreating the process of what I did with the lakes, but using the canals in Huddersfield to Manchester to document. So I have to run the canal, which is 20 miles, I can do that. It's no problem. But
Yeah.
document where the mills were and where they currently are, and turn that into some sort of embroidered wool.
Like an industrial heritage record kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's an exhibition piece, but it brings in different people and craft, and that's really exciting. That sounds like it could be amazing. So I think, it's just trying to it's showing people what embroidery can do, what it can be. And again, going back to that question, I think tattoo artists and graffiti artists, I think they might not have considered this before. So
no.
Someone say, let me embroider one of your pieces. They might be thinking, actually, there's a lot of scope here for something else.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a great skill. And I love hand embroidery. I absolutely adore it. But I haven't got the time or the patience to sit there and embroider. And knowing me, if I started, I'd hate it halfway through and stop and never finish it.
Yeah.
And I do love technology. So for me, digital embroidery is the perfect solution for that. And I do drop the needle and I do free machine it as well. And I do work into it afterwards by hand. So I will put rhinestones, or I might hand embroider a little bit with my limited skills.
Yeah.
Or I might send it off to someone who's got the skill that I need and say, can you just embroider that bit in that style?
Right. Yeah.
So you've got a hybrid of different techniques.
Yeah.
And that collaborative thing, again, it goes back to that collaborative thing. I think if people have got the skills, you've got to kind of use them and showcase them, or otherwise skills get lost.
I think so. And you were talking there about, you mentioned Claire Hunter. Now, a lot of her stories, the stories that she documented in her book, are all about collaboration and all about embroidery's role as a storytelling thing. And a way of recording memories and various different things. So it's that story keeps coming back again, isn't it? It's throughout history, this idea of collaboration and joint working and telling stories and messages. That's what embroidery is about.
It is. I mean, when you look at photographers, they try and capture the essence of a situation within their image, and the same with graphic designers and, again, graffiti artists. Why have you graffitied that? What were you saying in that? But then when you translate it, the great thing about me, what I like for embroidery, where graphic design is very flat, embroidery brings a tactile quality to it.
It does, yeah.
So it's that texture, and it's that layering and breaking the stitches, or the way the stitches move in a certain place. So you bring in something new to potentially a flat image. You bring in a different character to it, and that really is intriguing. For me, it makes you look at an image a lot longer, because you're really looking at it as a subject, as an image and a narration, but then you're looking at the stitches and how it's been put together.
Yeah, which is really, I suppose, also reflects in your love of tailoring as well, because that's that message in a different format. Again, it's all about the shape and the styling, and how you can manipulate the fabric to get the look that you want. So I can see the threads. I can see the kind of threads, how those things go together.
Yeah, it's absolutely. And when I was going back to the MA when I started, and it was about tailoring, I was looking at personalisation of men's tailoring. Other than just printing a lining for a jacket, what else could you do with a jacket?
Yeah,
that personal essence to it. So I removed the lining altogether and thought, well, actually, don't have a lining, because the inside of a tailored jacket is beautiful, and it's all the construction. It's everything in there. And then obviously it's canvas in there, so it's like, oh, I can embroider on canvas. This
right. Yes. See where you've come from with that. Yeah.
So all of that inside element, rather than being hidden, is suddenly exposed and celebrated for the process. And in my work, what I do, I like to break. As the machine's going, I like to skip stitches. So the foundation stitches, the first layer that go down, they're usually hidden with the top layer. So sometimes that is really nice how they've done that, but you never see it.
Yeah.
It's always embroidered. So I expose it.
Right.
Either I skip the stop stitches, or I reverse it and put the underlayer on top of the top layer.
Right.
So again, it's about exposing the way it's put together and celebrating the process, as well as, obviously it looks great, but it's all about that process and technique and skill.
So you were talking there about the process, and sometimes, putting the underlayer on top and kind of being disruptive and taking the insides and all those kind of things. So has there been any instances, David, where you've maybe got a funny story for us? We usually laugh along nicely with all of these. Is when something perhaps didn't go quite as planned and you thought, oh dear, that's a bit of a disaster. And what did you learn from that, which is usually the good point out of all this? Have you got any silly stories for us, David, on that?
I do. The one that sticks out to me, and I still laugh and bury my head in shame, is going back to the Windermere run. Obviously, when I'm running, I ran it. I went through all these different areas and took a picture of the rubbish and then kept going. So afterwards, I looked on the internet what's in that area, gathered images. I had some images from some areas myself. And one particular mile that I had was mile 15, which was Burrabeck. And I researched Burrabeck on the internet and got some nice images. And fortunately, I was left with the Burrabeck box to embroider. Because if one of the volunteers had got it, it would have been disastrous. Because what happened was I embroidered this piece, which took me hours and hours, probably 4 or 5 days solid, and it looked great. And then my wife, who's from the area,
so she's from around there, right?
She's from Bowness, family from Bowness. So she looked at it and said, I can't remember ever seeing that in that area. And I initially ignored it and thought, no, you're just being silly. I didn't want to hear it.
You forgot,
And then it was bugging me. And then I thought, I best have a look. And I went back to my images on the internet and I found out that the Burrabeck I was looking at was Burrabeck 50 miles away in Lancashire. So I'd embroidered the wrong location.
The wrong place.
It was a bit of a learning curve.
Crikey.
I thought, shall I show you this? And I thought, well, if it's going to the lakes, and someone from that area, they'll say, well, that's not. So I ended up going back up to the Lake District. I ended up running from Bowness down and double checking my areas and then stopping at 15. And I thought, oh no, what rubbish? So I thought, well, I'll look for a new piece of rubbish.
Right.
And so I stood there, and it's a road with woods and a caravan park.
Right.
And it's the Hill of Oaks. I'm not kidding you. On the wall was this rusty old bike chain.
Right.
And I thought that is an amazing piece of rubbish, just left dumped on a wall. And I took my own photographs and I went home and I used those. So I know mile 15 is definitely mile 15.
Oh, I bet your wife was going, I told you so. I bet she was really chuffed, wasn't she?
She was, but I was just so relieved that one of the volunteers didn't get that box. I think it's fate I got that box. But I went back and checked every single one after that. I was panicking. I was just like, no. The lesson I learned from that is obviously, don't be lazy. It's best just to get your own research and don't rely purely on the internet and what you see.
True enough.
We'll check your sources, I think, is the key thing.
Thank you for that story, though. That is really that's quite entertaining. But I'm glad it turned out happily ever after.
I've got a spare panel as well.
Maybe a place in Lancashire wants to do their own litter embroidery. Here, look, I've got your starting point.
Well, I was thinking, when you've got those artists, like musicians, and they die, and suddenly someone's found an old music tape of one of theirs. I was thinking it could be like that, where we found this other section of this embroidery piece. I wonder why this was never used, and you just leave everyone guessing.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, I love that. That's a really great way to end that particular story. So, David, we could absolutely, I should stop saying this. We could talk all day about all of these things. As we kind of wrap up then, is there anything extra that you want to talk about? I know you talk quite a lot about your kind of current projects. Is there anything else you wanted to just highlight you've got in terms of future plans and projects as we move towards closure?
Well, my future plans, I'm trying, obviously, the collaboration series. I'm trying to not just elevate my profile as an embroiderer, but obviously I'm trying to elevate digital embroidery and bring it into the limelight and really bridge those gaps between creative individuals and and really help the Embroiderers Guild as much as I can in terms of promoting embroidery as a textile. I think it's an amazing skill to have. Like I say, I teach at Sheffield Hallam in the fashion department. We have an embroidery machine, and I do know students are fascinated by it, especially when they've learned the CAD, the computer software. Yes. They're fascinated by embroidery, and it's something that they think they can achieve in the time they've got. So I think there's a lot of potential for embroidery. Yeah, I'll do what I can, and I'm open to collaborations. If anyone's got any that they want to share with me or propose any collaboration opportunities, then just get in touch. I'm more than keen.
Right, that's fabulous. Do you know, I'm so chuffed that I found that article, because here we have a really great cheerleader for embroidery in our midst here. So that's fantastic. I am so pleased that the Yorkshire Post article was shoved my way. Right, David, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you.
Thank you very much, Sue.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. So everybody, go and follow David on Instagram. Go and find out the images of all this rather intriguing collaboration work he's been doing as well. So thank you so much, David. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you, Sue. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and information around this podcast. Please visit stitcherystories.com. Of course, you can listen to Stitchery Stories on plenty of podcast apps at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify and plenty more besides. You can also ask your smart speaker to play Stitchery Stories podcast too. But wherever you listen, why not leave us a rating and a review to encourage other people to listen too? I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that for me. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. Keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery Stories.